the most brilliant portion of the day is collapsed, إِذَا الشَّمْسُ كُوِّرَتْ, and the most stellar feature of the night. The moon is in one place, but the stars are all over. Right? That's the most visible feature in the end of night. Wherever you turn, at least you'll see the stars. Right? That has now also lost its light, its brilliance, and it's falling apart. So this is what's happening in the sky. The next thing Allah Azza wa Jal mentions, وَإِذَا الْجِبَالِ, and when even the mountains, سُيِّرَتْ, when the mountains are made to move casually. And you know in Surah Naba, we found وَسُيِّرَتِ الْجِبَالُ فَكَانَتْ سَرَابًا. Similar ayah, but there the word سُيِّرَتْ was first, and jibal was second. That was jumla fi'liyah, that was in the fi'l form. This is actually more emphatic because it's talking to a tougher kind of kafir. This is a more adamant kafir. And so the language here is tough. Even the mountains are going to be made to move casually. And this is after Allah has mentioned subhanahu wa ta'ala in the previous surah, وَالْجِبَالَ أَرْسَاهَا. The mountains that He, even before that, An-Nazi'at, Allah Azza wa Jal mentioned the mountains that He pegged deep into the ground, and now He's saying they're going to move casually. They're going to be uprooted, and they're going to be floating about. And this tasir is used for casual walking. You know, sayyara, for example, in Arabic, it doesn't mean like caravan, like Dodge Caravan nowadays. It means the caravan of old times. You know, camels and horses and luggage and all of this traveling. It doesn't travel fast. It travels softly, easy travel. Okay? Sara means to casually take a walk in a garden or something like that. So Suyirat al-Jibal, it's not like a rough kind of movement. They're just floating away. So first, you don't believe your eyes at what's happening at the sun. Then you see the stars falling. And then when your eyes see the stars falling, what's the next thing you see? You see the mountains. And now the mountains seem like they're moving, and you kind of don't believe your eyes. What's happening over there? وَسُيِّرَتِ الْجِبَالِ. And you know, for the desert environment, a lot of the wild animals and beasts that they feared, they were up in the mountains. They were, closer to the mountains, there's more greenery, or there's more places, caves and things like this, where the dangerous animals can be. So that's where the animals were. Now, what's the next thing that Allah Azza wa Jal mentions? He says, وَإِذَا الْعِشَارُ عُطِّلَتْ. This is very powerful, actually. Ishar in the Arabic language is the plural of ushara. Okay? And ushara are the she-camels that are 10 months pregnant. It comes from ashara. Ashara meaning 10, right? So the she-camel, when it's 10 months pregnant, it's called ushara, and the plural is al-ishar. This was very, very important to the Arab. Like we find the comment, خَصَّ الْعِشَارِ لِأَنَّهَا أَنْفَسُ مَالٍ عِنْدَ الْعَرَبِ وَأَعَزُّهُ عِنْدَهُم. Right? This was highlighted by Allah because it's the most noble of wealth, the most precious of wealth, the most coveted of wealth with the Arabs, and this was the most honored of them. I mean, this is some serious investment, and the one who owns this is like it's a pride and joy for them. Okay, so now it's kind of like owning a high roller nowadays, right? Or a good piece of real estate or something like that. It's a status symbol, and it's a lot of money. It's a lot of money, right? So now Allah Azza wa Jal says about these ishar, even these ishar uttilat. Atala literally means to become useless, or to become not taken care of. And the Arabs would use it even for a woman, if she's not wearing jewelry, if she's not like decked out in jewelry, they'll use atala for her. But she's not, seems like she doesn't have anything to do. She's kind of useless in society. And this is the Jahili Arab mind, right? They decked women out, and this was their purpose, for zina, for beautification. If she's not doing that, what purpose does she have? So there's that male chauvinist kind of attitude, even in the language previously. Then mu'attal. A person who goes for a job, and then his boss says, I don't have any more work for you, can go. And he's been put to waste, is a person who's mu'attal. Allah uses in Quran, subhanahu wa ta'ala, He uses it in Surah Al-Hajj, when He talks about a town that's been destroyed, He says, وَبِئْرٍ مُعَطَّلٍ. Right? وَبِئْرٍ مُعَطَّلَ rather. A well that has been put to waste, meaning the town is destroyed, خَاوِيَةٌ عَلَى عُرُوشِهَا, it's completely turned over, and there's a well in it. Of course, a well is a useful thing, but when the town is destroyed, everybody's dead. What happens to that well? It's going to waste. It's being destroyed. So, a bit in mu'attala. So Allah says about this most precious asset, He says, when it's been let go of, like nobody cares for it, it's wandering around useless. And this was the thing, if anybody saw it, they would see security around it, there's good fence around it, right? They're taking care of it, it's got a rope on it, maybe even branded with the owner's name. This is a precious asset, not to be left alone. But on this day, when that chaos happens, when the human being who owns this kind of wealth sees the sun being wrapped up and the stars falling apart and the mountains moving, then ishar is useless to him. He doesn't care about this anymore. And this is, understand the psychology of this ayah, subhanAllah. If you're in a burning building, you're not going to talk about how much money you have in your 401k. Or you're not going to talk about how your investments are going. What's your only problem now? Get out of the building. You don't care about your investments. You don't care about your money. Everything is useless to you at this point except your own survival. When somebody's crashing, a plane crash or a shipwreck or something like that and people are in the water, you don't care where your iPod went or where your laptop is. You don't care. So, وَإِذَا الْعِشَارُ عُطِّلَتْ. This is when the she-camel is let loose. One thing I want you to remember is this is the first pregnancy that is mentioned in this surah. We will find there are 2 pregnancies mentioned in this surah. And that's a very poetic, beautiful connection between the 2 things. This is the first one, when the she-camel is pregnant for 10 months. Okay? وَإِذَا الْعِشَارُ عُطِّلَتْ. Then Allah says, وَإِذَا الْوُحُوشُ حُشِرَتْ. This word, وَحْش, هُوَ مَا لَا يَسْتَأْنِسْ مِنْ دَوَابِ الْبَرِّ. This is the animal that does not have affection for other creatures on the land. It cannot be domesticated, in other words. This is a wild animal. Okay, wahsh. Wahsh is the opposite of ins. Okay, and ins is a human being that has affection, and it can show affection to other creatures. But wahsh, a wild animal, a beast that is incapable of showing affection to others and attacks on sight. This is the kind of animal that's called wahsh. Another meaning of wahsh that's understood in Arabic literature, for example, they will say, مَشَى فِي الْأَرْضِ وَحْشًا. He walked on the earth with wahsh. What that means is he walked by himself. Nobody else was around him. This illustrates that this person was hard to get along with. And so whenever he walked, he didn't have any company. He was by himself. So that's, the 2 things are parallel. The wild animal, the dangerous animal, you will notice he's by himself, right? And then the human being, when he walks by himself. Allah says about these wuhush, these all forms of wild beasts and creatures, hushirat, that they will all be herded. Hashr is different from jam'a. Jam'a is to gather. Hashr also commonly used for gathering. But hashr is actually used for herding animals specifically, gathering animals. And when you gather animals, you don't gather them on their accord. They don't want to be gathered. You force them, like the shepherd, right? He does hashr of the animals. He herds them forward. And this is one of the names of the day of resurrection, for example, Yawm al-Hashr, the day of herding. Because all human beings, against their own will, they will be herded towards Arafah, right? They will herd towards that one field where all of us have to be questioned. Now Allah mentions these kinds of animals. Now, when you think of being herded, you think of domesticated animals. But here Allah didn't mention al-an'amu hushirat. He said, al-wuhushu hushirat. Wild animals. Animals that would never stand next to each other. And the only the thing that's close to this that you might be able to see in this dunya is when there's a flood, right? When there's a terrible kind of flood, and there's only a little patch of land left. The 2 kinds of animals that otherwise would be at each other's throats are standing next to each other, both afraid of the water. They don't care that the food is standing right next to me or my killer is standing right next to me. There's a larger fear. So when the mountains start collapsing and the sun is falling apart, these huge calamities are taking place, these animals lose their natural instinct of attack or fear of each other. Instead, they have a larger thing to worry about, so they're standing right next to each other, herded together, one on top of another. This is one of the meanings of hashr. When you're gathered, really forced literally on top of each other, crunched together. This is the state of the animals. Now look at this interesting and beautiful contrast that Allah draws from the previous surah. In the previous surah, human beings were running away from each other. And in this surah, the animals are running towards one another. SubhanAllah. The catastrophe of that day, and again, this is a reversal of nature. By nature, these animals would not be herded together. And by nature, human beings would be together. And their nature is gone, so they're running away from, the human beings are running away from each other, even from the ones that they're always together with. And on the other hand, these animals, they would always be apart, and now they've been brought together. SubhanAllah, everything has been reversed. All the things we are used to are now been reverse engineered. SubhanAllah Azza wa Jal. Anyhow, let me move forward to the next catastrophic event. وَإِذَا الْبِحَارُ سُجِّرَتْ. And when even the mountains, and I say even the mountains, or rather the oceans, in fact even the oceans, I say even because bihar is mentioned first. Not sujjirat al-bihar, but إِذَا الْبِحَارُ سُجِّرَتْ. And when this happens, now what is al-bihar? It's the oceans. The word abhur in Arabic, abhur, is what's called jam'u qilla. It's a few oceans, or few bodies of water. Bihar means all bodies of water collectively. All of them. So it's jam'u kathra. It's the plural of multitude. Okay, so even in Arabic there's this thing about singular, pair, plural, and super plural. They don't just have plural, they also have super plural. This is a super plural. All of the oceans. All of the oceans. The vast multitudes of bodies of water. they are all going to experience this tasjir. Now let's look at this word tasjir. Sajjar at-Tanur, an Arabic expression, is used when you have a large pot and you fill it with coal and you fill it with fuel and then you throw a fire in it. So you know, it's not full of things that are just flammable, they're actually used to excite flames. So that's the worst kind of flame. So one of the implications of that is that the water of the ocean will actually turn into fuel for a fire. That's how incredible this transformation will be. That water, which we think of as the opposite of exciting flames, it's used to put out flames, will be used on that day to excite flames. The only thing we can compare that to in our time is when you have a fire and you put a few drops of water in it, what happens? It gets excited, it gets sparked. So that fire will be so powerful that this ocean will seem just like drops being thrown into it. SubhanAllah. That this fire will be blazed. Because of this, some scholars' opinion was that the hellfire is actually located underneath the oceans. Wallahu a'lam. They said when it gets exposed, then this will just be like a drop thrown into a flame. It just gets to explode like that. The other thing here is that it may be a means of ijaz. It may be allegory. It may not be literal. What this means then is when a flame is excited in a pot, then its contents they burst out. So what this may be is an expression of the oceans not staying within their boundaries, but they may be just popping out, blowing out of the oceans. The waters being overwhelmed by the flames underneath, or the catastrophic events on the earth, that there's flooding taking place everywhere. And this may also, some commented, maybe this is because the animals are all herded together, that they see this boiling water coming towards them. So the oceans boiling over could be figurative and it can also be literal.